Welcome to the Pain Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones, and today I am joined by Lauren Turner. Lauren is a licensed clinical social worker, mental performance coach, and former collegiate athlete. She is the founder of the Turner Practice, where she blends therapy, mindfulness, and performance coaching to help athletes build resilience, focus, and confidence on and off the field. With a trauma-informed, body-based approach, Lauren helps high performers not only just optimize their performance, but improve overall well-being. She also is a speaker, author, clinical supervisor, and a co-host of the Hey Boo podcast. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, sometimes I forget all those things. Thank you so much for having me out. Oh my gosh, she's still talking.
So tell us a little bit how you got into this work, and you don't have to be like, I was 2 years old, but you could start off with like, what did you see as a college athlete
Okay.
that kind of transformed you into this work?
So it's interesting because we're in the injury, like the pain-free podcast, right? So we're talking about so that means that in order to be able to know what pain is, you have to be able to know what it's like to be pain-free, right? So I was an athlete in college. I feel like one of the things that I experienced was injuries. I feel like I got injured a few times, but like also just the ongoing pain of kind of like continuous overworking your body and your muscles and like learning kind of all of those things have always been something very curious to me. And now in my work as a mental performance coach, as a sports social worker, I often see this comes up a lot for our clients too.
So when you are dealing with somebody who has the physical pain, how do you help them adapt? Because we've all been hurt. We've all probably overtrained, especially in college, because a lot of times, you're not fueling your body properly. There's a lot of things that we don't quite know how to dial in, although I think now it's a little bit better because we're a little bit more aware. But I don't know if we have the mental piece. So how do you help athletes deal with injury and injury recovery?
So that's a really good question. And each athlete is a little bit different because it depends on what, time period that they come into their injury. So if it's immediately after the injury, then we're kind of rehashing it. We're kind of going through some of the different experiences of it, like maybe some of like the immediate dilemmas, like, do I get surgery? Do I not? Do I consult with these other people? So it's kind of like more of like a companionship experience to help them be able to feel comfortable in the decisions that they're making and asking questions and things like that, to when it's time for them to come back on the field. So like those are two very different stages of recovery that I like to think about when working with different athletes. And of course there's the active recovery, like while you're all the way going through it and you're checking in with your therapist, and we're there again to be that extra support, to listen, to talk about the challenges that come along with managing pain. And sometimes we even get into spaces where the pain may change a little bit to how to manage it, right? And other things I like to talk about is like how to be able to not just integrate mindfulness, but like holistic practices into recovery, and thinking about the recovery model, which I'll talk about again a little bit soon. And when we think about having different stages of recovery, it's so important to even know that it comes. Can I talk about the 5 stages of recovery? Is this something that
Absolutely.
out on the podcast a lot? You might already know this, Dana, but just to kind of like tell you that there's even in recovery, not even just in injuries, that there's a recovery model that goes in like kind of like the stages of change. Have you ever heard of this concept before?
Not really. I mean, I probably experienced it, but I didn't know that it had a clinical
Yeah.
adaptation.
So it kind of, this model goes into so much of mental health in general, right? And it starts with the idea that anything in your life that you know that you need to recover from, because one of the challenges I've also learned about athletes is that we may be in pain long before we ever tell anyone else that we're in pain, long before we acknowledge to ourselves that we're in pain, and long before anyone else can see our pain. right? And this is not too far off. So, like, when I think about even the recovery model, I like to think of it in this term, which is like the pre contemplation, which is, I injury free right now? Where is my pain level? Oh, well, this shoulder has been kind of giving me a problem. I had a shoulder problem. That's why I'm going to talk about the shoulder. Or my knee has been giving me a problem, or my hip, or my back, or my neck, or my throwing arm, or my pinky, or something has been creating a significant amount of pain. And then it says some of our athlete mind, which is, you might say, like, oh, this kind of hurts. And someone says, well, is it bleeding? Put a little dirt on it. At least that's what it was back in the day. Now the model is a little bit different, where it's like the pre-contemplation part is it hurt? I don't know, but like, I'm going to keep playing anyway. Then it's contemplation, which is like, I think that this is something that's really not this pain is nagging now. I need to find a way to be able to make it work to help heal me. And then it's like, now I'm in action mode. I am saying, I'm ready to go and see the doctor. I'm ready to go and get treatment. I'm ready to go see the therapist. I'm ready to go to PT. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. And then there is the inevitable relapse, which is either re-injury or relapse as we know it to be, in, like, potentially when trying to manage the pain, right? That, like,
Mhm.
it may come back in an unfortunate way. And then we have maintenance, which is our, like, somewhat final stage, which is where maybe you and I have come to, where we're a little bit older in the game now and we're not like as active, maybe not as active,
Gung ho.
gung ho about like our rigor around it, where we're in maintenance, where we're working out now because it's a part of our lifestyle and our process, that we just have been athletes forever. So what else are we gonna do with our free time, right? Like, well, I read books too, but like, it's like the energy behind it is sometimes different, but to know that, like, you can go through any of the stages at any time, and that you can also go back through them at any time, and that there's no linear space to the recovery model, that I like to acknowledge with people, and that at any stage you could have the risk of potentially becoming injured, but you could also get back into the space of not being injured anymore as well.
That's interesting because with chronic pain, it's similar because, they always show, like, the spaghetti crazy drawing of what recovery looks like. Because when I was going through it, I kind of felt like I was just going to, like, I figured it out, I'm cool, and everything's golden, and now it's just smooth sailing from here, and not realizing that, life is life and that things pop up or feelings pop up around certain things. And for me, a lot of it was about the physical recovery. So I just wanted to get back to where I was and be able to play softball and not worry about my head throbbing, or lift weights and not worry about if I was gonna be sore 2 days later, or whatever the patterning that I kinda created for myself. And I just wanted to break through, but then different things kept popping in as I was going through it, and so then there was, like, this discouragement because then I'd get a headache and I'd go, "Oh, I'm back to square one," even though I wasn't back to square one, but I didn't know that, so there was a lot of, like, crying frustration, like, anger, PTSD, like, there was all, like, weird trauma around just the stuff, and it's different, I think, in a chronic pain space because especially for women, a lot of times our chronic pain, we don't really advertise. And if you're an athlete and you blow your ACL, it's visible and people feel badly for you. Damn, that's, when are you going to get back to playing? Oh, how's your rehab going? There's a process that people see. And of course, there is a mental aspect of it. So I don't want to belittle like the physical injury as well. But sometimes with chronic pain, we've done such a good job of hiding it,
Mhm.
that masking, that people don't acknowledge that it's even there. And we don't wanna talk about it because I don't want you to think that I'm less than or I can't keep up or whatever it may be, and then we kinda suffer in silence, if that makes sense.
I think that that's also part of the culture of sports too, is this idea that, where is the space for you to be injured if everyone can't see it? Just like, where's the space for you to be a part of the team if everyone can't see it, right? If
Mhm.
there's this visibility component, that becomes really unfortunate sometimes. And one of the things that I also notice is that when athletes do become injured, it becomes an opportunity for them to really rethink their identity a lot of the time. So many athletes have been, so steeped in their identity in athleticism that they forget that they have other interests, hobbies, parts of themselves that are equally as important. Whereas they may, not necessarily lean into that as much when they are the star of the football team or the softball team. And they're ending up missing out on so many other pieces of their identity, similar to what we talked about earlier about these artists, right? That they're not just artists, that they can also see themselves in more than one way. And sometimes I wish more that athletes were able to do that in a way that looked healthy, because then the injury wouldn't be this life sucking experience. It'd still be a challenge that they're overcoming, but even the re identifying themselves in this new stage is a challenge. And then the identity is then changed something that almost feels like it's negative instead of like it's a part of the experience. There's this phrase in sports psychology that I read, and it said, and it's one that's sticking to me. It said, there are two types of athletes, those who are injured and those who haven't been injured yet.
Mm.
Like the injury is coming one way or another, right? And if it's not injury, maybe it's going to be pregnancy. And if it's not pregnancy, maybe it's going to be that you have a different life, like maybe it's a loss of a family member, that life happens in your life and that the pain is going to be one of those things. Maybe it's a positive pain, like I said, with the childbirth, but like the pain of the loss of a parent is also something that people can also have to carry with them in the same recovery model. It's one of the reasons I use that today to talk about this in terms of mental health.
How do we change that for maybe some parents that are listening? Because I didn't have that because of the coaching I had was very old school coaching. So my identity was that as a catcher. If anything, right? Like there's a softball player, but then there's like a catcher, which of course is accompanied with all kinds of aches and pains because you're constantly getting hit with balls and bats and
Oh my goodness. I just started being the little kids baseball coach. I'm covered in bruises. I'm like, somebody else could do this some of the time. I also could probably be a better catcher, but you understand what I mean. I'm like,
Yeah, catching sucks, but I love it, like, because there is, that type A piece of it where you get to control, you're the only one facing the other direction. There's all kinds of reasons why you'd wanna be a catcher, but that was my identity. So, how do you change that, now in your adult life as a coach or even just being around parents that are having their children perform sports and other things, like how do we learn or teach these youngins to separate? Because now they think they're going pro. And when I was a
yeah.
kid, I was playing with a broomstick and a rock was how we learned how to hit. And now these kids have, 3, 4, 5, $6,000 bats. They're getting gloves with their names embroidered on them. They're doing like it's just they're going to 15 camps a year. Their parents are paying thousands of dollars for them to be on these travel teams. They're wanting to get in front of college coaches when they're 9 years old. Like, how do you teach families like there needs to be Dana the little human as opposed to Dana the catcher?
I think that I mentioned identity earlier, but I also feel like there's something that has so much power to it about not overscheduling your kids and placing your own ideas onto them, that kind of like also giving them the opportunity to slow down a little bit and explore different interests can be really important without sticking necessarily to sports. I know that there is a lot of pressure, I think, in our culture about the beauty of sports, but that we also need to give the kids the opportunity to be kids too, right? I also feel like some of your mindset around why you're participating in the activity is really important. I think that especially for children that are under the age of 13. And it's so interesting because so many people are asking their children to specialize before the age of 13. And then what happens, Dana? What have we learned? Do they continue to play sports after the age of 13?
Nope, they tap out.
No. That 500, that 5,000, you said $500 bat? Girl, who's gonna be using that bat? It's gonna be collecting dust. You could have put that in their actual college fund, but you didn't ask them what they wanted, and you didn't give them the opportunity to think about their identity in a way that kind of may, allow for space for that. One of the other things is, like, also giving them the options to be able to learn mental performance skills, because the mental performance piece isn't just for sports. Like, I use it in my public speaking and running my business every day. You have to be able to have a good sense of your own mental state to be able to accomplish anything exceptional. I like to think of this brief on of a documentary that I listened to about Kobe Bryant the other day, and they were talking about how he would tell people, I don't respect you because you're not working as hard as I am. I have a work ethic that I know is going to drive me. But there are some things that you have to also teach your young athletes, which is that your work ethic can also help you to be able to manage that identity piece to help with that pain understanding. When you say, I know that I'm going to be here working as hard or harder than everyone else. And maybe even not that, but like that I'm going to be working with intention and that I'm going to be mindful about how I'm approaching these situations, that I'm going to have a plan for, can you hear all of that competitive
Yes, I can.
competition is everywhere? It's not like your kids are going to find a place to be competitive, even in no other opportunities if you give them the chance to. The kids are currently, for those of you who can't hear, there are 2 kids right now fighting over some type of video game. I don't know. Somebody just lost. I don't care. But like, I think that there's something to it that's like, let them also be kids. Let them play. Let them go outside. Let them kind of also have some of that free range of play. And I feel like sometimes people are so focused on developing them as athletes that they're not giving them that same free range of play that brought the joy that you had with the stick and the rock.
Yeah, no, and that's a big one because like you said, as a coach, I see somebody who's talented, I'm like, "Hey, you wanna play?" And they're like, "Nah, dude, I'm done." And I was like, "Wait, you're 16, like, how can you be done?" It's like, "I've been playing for 10 years already, and I'm over it,
And
and I wanna go and hang out with my friends, or I wanna go to the beach, or I wanna do something during the summer, I don't wanna play softball."
I wanna eat what I wanna eat. I want to
Yes.
be able to not have somebody criticizing every single thing that I do, right? I don't wanna have to be training for this, that sometimes that it's like, I just wanna live my life, and that's where we start to see that there becomes a shift in adulthood where we can compete for fun and, hot dogs, but the kids can't. It's so bizarre to me that, like, there becomes then this, like, shift in even what it means to experience joy, to have fun, to be able to allow yourselves to solve those kinds of social problems that those
Mhm.
just having about who won and who lost without a formal person telling you, like, "Hey," like, remember the playground rules of, like, be nice
You
to
just
the
play.
playground or you gotta play or whatever, or you gotta deal with the playground consequences, right? Then they may
Right.
deal with you or whatever the consequence is. But there's some pieces of that we've lost so much in the overproduction of sports, culture, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, going back to your comment about Kobe, like Kobe's a little scary. I know people really like idolize him and they idolize Jordan and but they have to kind of understand like these guys are like outliers and they're not terribly nice people. I mean, RIP Kobe, but it's like he even said, right? Like that's why he wanted to be called the Black Mamba because he didn't like the Black Mamba has no friends. I'm out there and I'm outworking everybody and I'm going to be the best that I can be. And I can't imagine that psychological shift from kind of being an asshole to not. I could just click it because I know for me, like coming off the field, and that's what also makes it hard to be a professional athlete because I know I can't make that shift. Being an amateur athlete, sometimes like I need some time to like just decompress and kind of play things out and then either set up something I'm going to work on later or let it go and just go home and chill. But I can't imagine you shoving a microphone in my face and being like, damn, you didn't pass the ball to Lauren. What's the matter with you? And expecting like an appropriate response instead of like, screw you, dude. Like I'm out there working hard. And, like people get, and I'm seeing this with the young guys too, and girls, is that they're getting very defensive about their performance because they're under constant attack as opposed to looking at their performance as in a reflective view. It's now I have to defend. And if I lost, it's because the umpire didn't make the call or the official missed it, or so and so didn't pass me the ball, or I don't know, the water's cold. I don't know. What are some of the things swimmers blame their performance on? I don't know.
My goggles broke.
There
The
you go.
fell off.
Yeah.
My swimsuit came loose. Yeah, all kinds of things. But
Yeah.
or they couldn't hear the thing. But like, I feel like there's also something about being a professional and not a child anymore, where your own sense of accountability has to come in, right? Where you have to be able to know that you can control the things that you can control, and you can also have that mindset to be able to have that piece of where your value is and what just happened, that who you are doesn't change whether you're injured or not, right? That your value is because you exist, not because of the other things. And I think that there's a part of it that a lot of this fast paced internet culture has also gotten us really confused about, which is that those things make or break who you are as a human. And I think
Mhm.
this is one of the reasons too why athletes often do come to seek therapy when they are at the end of their recovery experience, when they're getting ready to go back into maintenance and get back on the field. Then they're like, oh, now it's time for me to go to therapy so I can talk about it, so I can get back into that high performance space. But the other thing is that they haven't finished going through that grieving process in the first place of the pain, right? And that restorative piece of the identity, which is something else that I would also like think is important. And then thinking about what it means to actually be in recovery. How do I sit with that sense of my own identity in this experience? And I think that there's a lot of power to athletes being able to come on the other side of it and admitting that they needed help all throughout the process, from their body to their mind. I tell a lot of young athletes, even when you're talking about the concussions and the headaches, right? That like, your brain is the most important part of your body. It controls everything that happens inside of it. Strongest muscle every time. If you're not training your brain, you're not training anything. If you're not working on your brain, if you're not thinking about how to be able to also eat healthy brain foods, how to be able to do brain exercises, how to be able to talk nicely to yourself, right? These are all brain activities that are constant needs that we have to think about how we can integrate them into our way to be able to play, right? So I really love all of that stuff and hope to help all of my clients who ask me to do that too.
Well, and that's perfect because I was gonna ask you if I'm a young athlete, whether I'm a high school athlete or college or possibly making the transition out, like, what are some steps that we can do to protect our mental health? Because we have these goals, and they're gonna shift because everything's always moving. So what can somebody do to kind of, I wanna say, like, preload themselves so that it's not a fall off the cliff, it's maybe a stumble down the curb?
I think that starting out with kind of goal setting constantly is important, that acknowledging goals that you have accomplished is also super important. And sometimes I notice that athletes often are so forward thinking that they never do any reflection of any of the positive things that they've done in the past. And that it ends up leading to this kind of imposter syndrome later where they're like,
Mm.
I didn't do anything. And it's like, you have like, new friend I've made, so cool. He's like, oh, I was an academic All-American. I did this, I did that, talking about, going down his resume. And then he said, I didn't even talk about, he's like, but I didn't win any awards. And I was like, you told me you were an academic All-American. An award, bro. What are you talking about? You win the Grammy you were hoping to win, but you're like, give me, like, where's your credit? Like, do you give
Right.
yourself credit for the things that you're doing? Like, you do amazing things. Like, why are you minimizing it, right? And it's because in sports, it's like this black or white experience. And we know that the rainbow is so full, right? Like, why do you have to choose these polar disparities when it can be something of all of the things in the middle?
But I know, like, you're, like, defending him. I can't help myself.
Ooh,
No.
my buddy.
Yeah, because no, and I won't defend him. There is this piece, like, and triathlon is a very interesting sport because there's a huge fall off. Like with baseball, softball, possibly swimming or whatever, there's like always the next meet. And there doesn't have to be a tremendous amount of recovery when you do the next thing. And so a lot of times, even as an athlete, if you win a game, you're like, oh, won that game. All right, who are we playing tomorrow? and you just move on to the next thing. And like with triathlon, because there's such a huge gap between races, if you're smart and you want to avoid re-injury or injury at all, you take the time, but there's a lot of space. And it's a lot of what ifs and I don't want this and long training days. And I feel like like as a triathlete, there is something that just really you go down deep, like, talking about how the waves of stuff,
That
like
like
that wave goes deep.
depression,
Yes,
post-race depression, which a lot of marathoners also talk about, is
right. Anybody who's doing endurance.
it's very real. You have to think about how you're talking about endurance, right? So you think about your endorphins are like up here, and then there's a crash when you start not training as much as you were before. Hope you like my theatrical hand.
Down.
One of the things that I've learned is that a lot of triathletes are also triathletes. So they will be doing one of any training for any particular of those three sports and still engaging in races that may not be the full triathlon, but maybe a half
You're
marathon,
doing a 5K.
on a 5K or a, bike race or the Ciclavia, which they have here in LA, which is like a bike ride, or you're just riding your bike for fun or going to spin class or whatever it is, but you're still kind of doing all of those things. This is also something that isn't happening as much for our youth athletes that are, excuse me, in year round same sport. They're not learning different sports. Their bodies aren't adapting to being able to switch to do many different things, whether it's, basketball, baseball, football, soccer, cricket, rugby,
Anything.
swimming, badminton, all of it, that we have to think about giving our kids the opportunity to be able to try a lot of different activities too.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So before we wrap up, if there's one thing that you want somebody to walk away with, what is the one thing that you think that every athlete needs to hear?
I think that if you're listening to your body, that you are going to hear so many different things. So give yourself the opportunity to like let it tell you what you need. Kind of with that pre-contemplation, like, ow, that kind of hurt. Like I tweaked something. Go get it checked out. That like you don't want to continue to build on the injury. If you've been feeling a little bummed about your sport, say, hey, mom, dad, hey, self, maybe it's time for me to go get a therapist. Maybe something that I thought was bringing me joy isn't bringing me joy anymore. What's going on here? Is it the sport itself? That means like, is it my coach? Is it that like, or is it my life that's gone awry and I feel like it's out of control? And this may be the one thing that we can control, right? Is that maybe I do need a chance to sit down. And this has been something that I know I couldn't get anywhere else. And sometimes when I look at injury in athletes too, sorry, this is a little bit of a side note. I'm also looking at, is this something that's self-inflicted, right?
Oh yeah, totally. Because I don't want to do that. My knee starts to hurt because I really don't want to do that.
And one of the things that I'm going to think about too, and that this is going to be my tip, is that if you're starting to think, I'd rather be injured than continue to do this, that this is your sign that it's time for you to ask for help, instead of injuring yourself in the process. That would be my recommendation.
Fantastic. So for anybody who would like to connect with you, learn more about your work, follow
Yeah.
you, where could they find you?
Yes, please follow us at the Turner Practice on all socials. You can also follow us at www.theturnerpractice.com. And we also have recently started a 501c3 where we're hoping to be able to share this resources for mental health with more youth in sports. And that is following us at the Turner Practice Project on IG. But you can find us everywhere, and we love to talk mental health, and we are also open to taking new clients for both sports social work and sports mental performance coaching.
Awesome. Lauren, thank you so much for your time. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you, Dana. And thanks. I hope we can stay in touch. It's nice to get to know you.
Yes.